The Cost of Concordia by internet historian, the reprise. I do love the opening bits of this is fair use and all that.
The Cost of Concordia. Ship of dreams. It's been 8 years.
Has it really only been 8?
I can still smell the buffets from their 5 restaurants. The casino and 3-story theater had hardly been used.
This is so opulent.
The gym, the day spa, the sheets in 1,500 luxurious cabins hadn't even been slept in.
Oh my god.
Cost of Concordia.
That bartender makes bank.
$570 million to build. And you...
Wait. That was back then money. That's more today.
Could tell. You could really tell.
Yeah. Boat. Ship, if you will.
I remember it like it was just a few years ago. We had left Civitavecchia, a port in Rome, and we were making our way to Savona. It was day 2 of our 7-day journey. But that ship, she was cursed.
Oh my god.
When she premiered, the traditional bottle of champagne bounced right off the side instead of smashing.
About
Yeah. I mean, superstitious or not, that's not normal. So I mean, yeah, people are gonna look at that and go, I don't know about that, Captain.
omen. But I'm not the superstitious type. Nothing could go wrong on Friday, the
Bottles
13th
built different.
of January 2012, on the 100th year anniversary of the Titanic, on a ship that's also only safety rated for 2-compartment flooding. Especially not when you have a 5-star max level captain like Francisco Scatino.
That's amazing. Is this all true? Like, I feel that there's some embellishment or there's some satire there. Was it really the 100th anniversary? It might have been, actually. Oh my god, it might have been. That's wild.
Man who mysteriously rose from head of security to the position of captain within just a couple of years.
He knows exactly what to do in case of an emergency.
I have no idea how quick progression from that would be. Someone would have to inform me in the comments. I have no idea how quick progression from head of security to captain would be.
For example, when he caused this emergency in 2008, when he crashed into a port in Sicily.
Oh no.
And in 2010, in Warnemünde, Germany, when he was steering a different ship and came into port too fast and caused another collision. I've got a good feeling about this.
That's wild to think about, because he has a prior track record of just crashing ships. I mean, that's not an outright termination, right? It's like how at a job, right? If you are, say, supposed to set up a display or something like that, or you're supposed to, do something in a specific manner, as long as it's, OSHA and, compliant and all that, right? OSHA, I almost said TOS because, man, YouTube, but, compliant with the job, right? I mean, you're realistically afforded mistakes. I don't know how severe hitting a ship is, and I'm assuming if was there any fatalities, was there any casualties? I'm assuming that gets factored in as well, and maybe it would be some sort of remedial program. He has to do extra courses. He has to make sure that he's up to par. I don't know. That'd be very interesting to learn about how that mechanically would work, if there's investigation or not.
It's a beautiful evening. People are having fun on the slides, drinks at the bar. Antonio Magnotta is playing piano at the restaurant. Martin the Magician is setting up for his show. And the ship is setting up for a little detour. It's called a sail-by salute. Basically, you get real close to the shore and honk the horn. The locals hate it, but the customers love it, and it's a tradition. Scatino, the captain, comes into the dining hall with a lady, Dominica Samuelson. Remember this face, because you'll be seeing a lot of it later.
Man, you assume I don't have the memory of a goldfish.
Scatino eats his dinner with her and socializes for a little while. Then he, Dominica, and the maitre d' finish up and excuse themselves. They're heading to the bridge. It's time for that sail-by salute. This time, they're going to get closer than ever. Just 1,500 feet from the...
Who signs off on that? Like, obviously the captain is going to be able to, I feel like he's going to be able to make those decisions and override any potential veto, right? I mean, I guess I'm thinking of I'm assuming he has the permissions to override that. But doesn't he have to like inform anybody? You know, like, hey, if you're only allowed to get 1,500 feet within the shorelines, if you say I'm going to get 500 or if I'm going to get 1,500 feet within the shorelines, wouldn't it be protocol to inform somebody of deviation of course? Because it's like, I mean, it's why I guess I'm comparing to airplanes, right? How there's so much communication in the air because you don't want two airliners crashing each other. You don't want a commercial airliner smashing into some private plane, right? Maybe I'm overthinking this.
The island of Giglio. And how are they going to determine this distance? Well, of course, the captain is going to eyeball it. Apparently, it's not an uncommon thing to do. Scatino turns to the fella.
I mean, if you're good enough, right? So if something needs to be approximately 1 meter, right? And you've been doing something for 20, 30 years, right? I mean, yeah, I'm assuming you'd know what a meter is fairly well. I'm not saying you can't use any sort of aid, like a meter stick, whatever, right? But what I'm trying to get across is, I mean, that's not super egregious to me as long as they're competent enough and they have the experience to back it, if that makes sense. And then obviously they have access to a second opinion or any sort of instruments that would help them gauge that in a better capacity, or at least to solidify what they're doing.
Steering. His helmsman, Jacob Ruslibin.
Nice.
First interesting tidbit. Cost of Concordia has hired Jacob from Indonesia at a rock-bottom price, and he's a bit of a newbie to the job. In fact, his profession hitherto, a painter and a cleaner. It's his first time steering a massive ship, and he's very excited. At least, we think he is. It's hard to tell because he doesn't speak English or Italian very well at all. Off to a good start. The second in command orders the helmsman to 290. Now, don't be confused by these numbers, they're just the degrees on a compass.
Right.
At the same time, the captain whips out his cell phone and calls former captain Mario Palombo, who lives on the island. They chat about the safe distance to Giglio's shores. It's all very casual. Anyway, Mario says that the safe distance is between 0.3 and 0.4 miles from shore.
I mean, yeah, it's just casual conversation. How many times have you had a buddy, they'll call you and be like, so hypothetically, if this were to happen, not saying it did happen, but if this were to happen, how dangerous would this be? And you're just like, it's pretty dangerous. You should probably do this to make sure it's out, if that were the case, right? Okay, thanks. Then you hear him click. Or yeah, just in general, right? How many times have you had a coworker, a friend, an associate reach out, and it's just like, it's not the, hi, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing pretty well. It's just like, hey, so about this thing, maybe you may work on it, you may not work on it. One of the people involved may have experience in the subject. Very casual. I mean, I guess to be fair, I'm just used to these conversations.
The captain is going all in. This is not his first sail by salute, so he's confident in what he's doing. We're going...
Isn't that actually how the Red Baron fell? Because didn't the Red Baron literally write the book on modern air warfare? Or at least pioneered it. It's been way too long since I've discussed this. But what I do remember is that didn't he break like his 3 big rules in his final flight that actually got him shot down? If that's the case, confidence, if not overconfidence, is an absolute just pain. And it has definitely been the bane of many, many seasoned and qualified experts.
Closer than we've ever been before. The captain's eyeballing it again. New heading of 300, he tells the helmsman. Downstairs, Martin is about to cut his assistant in half. And of course, that means that there's already a lady inside this box. She's waiting for the cue, and then she'll...
There's a euphemism there. I'm not going to point it out.
Poke her legs out. The captain is giving more orders. Pulling gently to 310. Increase speed to 16 knots. Going this fast is going to be a fatal error. But before we talk about that, let's talk about another big problem. Language barrier.
Yeah.
Because at this point, the captain says 325, but the helmsman relays 315. So the first officer intervenes, and he goes, no, 335, which is also wrong. And then the captain clarifies, no, 325. The helmsman confirms 325. Their poor communication has them moving at a much wider angle than they think they are.
Right.
However, the captain should and would know this, except for the next problem, complacency about procedure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is always a fun one, regardless of the job. Oh, man, that's how, take it OSHA called on you. Allegedly.
The standard procedure of a ship this large is for the third officer to give exact positional coordinates every time the captain gives a new directional order. But they're not doing that. 330, he says. The helmsman relays 330. The ship reaches 16 knots. The captain then turns to the second officer and instructs him to go to the left wing. That's these things here, and they basically exist so you can get a better view over the whole vessel.
Right.
A few seconds pass, and then the mood starts to turn. Scatino notices white foam of waves breaking against the rocks directly in front of him.
So they're way too close at this point. From the speed and angle they're going out, they are way too close.
In the distance. The Cost of Concordia right now is almost 700 meters closer to the rocks than it should be. Without deviation, there is going to be a direct collision.
Oh, shit!
Scatino immediately commands the ship to start turning away. 335. Not enough. The captain shouts, 340.
So the issue is at the angle that they're going at, and let me kind of go back to the graphic really quick.
335. Not enough.
So the issue that they're going at is, depending on where it turns, right? I'm assuming it's going to just, so when they turn, this little bit is going to go, they're turning right, they're going to go this way. I almost said Migi, which is Japanese for right. I have like languages in my head that always jumble up. So if they go right, you know, while they can correct this way, there's still the drag. So if they go this way, effectively think of it straightening out. So this will go there. That's assuming there's nothing over in this area to be able to hit. You know, it depends on how close and how far they are and if there's any obstacles.
Enough. The captain shouts, 340. The captain yells, 350. Now, remember how I said that accelerating to 16 knots was a fatal error? Well, that's because it's made this ship incapable of such a drastic turn. What they've got is understeer. Here's an example.
The front end is not working. You're turning, and you're just going straight. You want to go over here, but you're going to end up over here.
Right.
So despite the order of 350, right now the bow is still only pointing at 327. Not nearly enough to miss the rock.
Yeah, because your angle, so if you're going at a slower speed, right, your angle could be here, right? But since they're going as fast as they are, to even begin to correct, they're having to, they're going on a wider angle here, which could lead to disaster. I'm assuming presumably there. You know, so Kip could have done things. I could have gone to higher education in a much greater capacity than I did. I just got lazy. It's not that I'm not smart, even though sometimes I really don't feel like it. It's just that I got lazy.
And oh no, it's about to get worse. That language barrier again. In these critical moments where every second counts, the helmsman wrongly relays 340. The captain snaps back, 350 starboard or we end up on the rocks. The third officer goes to assist the helmsman. Now, don't get confused by the orders from here. We're changing over to rudder instructions.
Okay, makes sense.
The captain yells, starboard 10.
I do appreciate that Internet Historian did provide that brief little insert as far as rudder instruction, because for, I would argue, your average viewer, as much as a lot of us might gloss that over, that's how you do an informative piece really well, especially if you're shifting so drastically in what you're talking about, because we're talking about what seems like the helm right at this point, so then swapping to rudder, so suddenly one of those things that I just would relay as far as this is a very good practice to have in making videos.
Starboard 20, and still it's not enough. Hard to starboard. That means as hard as it'll go.
Right.
But at this point, even if they clear these rocks, they need to get the rest of the ship to swing around it. So the captain yells, midship, which centers the rudder. The bow is now less than 150 meters from Skull Rock. Port 10. But
that's an ominous name. I'm assuming people pointed out the irony of this.
The helmsman only gets to port 5 before another order is given 2 seconds later. Port 20. They might just avoid disaster here, maybe. But then, oh no. One more time, the helmsman cocks up at the worst possible moment. The helmsman goes to starboard instead of port.
Oh, no. No. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely an investigation that's going to happen after this, right? There's definitely investigation that's going to happen from this.
undoing the swing. 8 seconds later, he realizes the error and corrects, but it's too late. He has just turned a probable near miss into a sure hit. All they can do now is hold on as the bow of the ship narrowly passes by the rocks. Hard to port! The second officer yells, "We're gonna hit!"
In all fairness, the captain did with the note that if it didn't happen, if that starboard and port mix-up didn't happen, it would have mixed. Simulation say it would miss the rock by 10 meters. The captain did successfully navigate that. There was other issues at play there.
Collision.
With collision, yeah. So giving the benefit of the doubt, he did navigate through that. He did choose the correct options. There was just a lot of other things at play. As far as the information so far, at the very least, information relayed to us, the captain did get that.
Downtown.
Oh, it's Nordman.
Town.
I love it.
It's day 56 of playing Russian roulette. Seems I never win.
Gonna drink
What?
all by yourself?
Wait, what?
Somebody has to.
I hear you're a man who's good at finding folks.
I'm many things.
I'm looking for this fella. I got to find him. It's
Oh.
breaking my little heart.
I'll see what I can do. I have contacts in thousands of servers in dozens of countries across the globe. And just like that, she was gone. The only thing she left was a calling card.
Amazing.
Sometimes when you follow a case, it follows you back. NordVPN can protect my online data. But who can protect me? From myself.
I love it.
When they said this job gets easier, it was just another lie. Forensics found his password spread all the way down the block.
Awful.
In a perfect world, we'd all use NordVPN. But I guess this isn't that kind of story.
I know this is comedic, but that is definitely contaminating a crime scene.
I took the brakes off my car. Man like me never really learned how to stop. Shut the fuck up. I took the steering wheel out too. I let the road take me where I'm supposed to be. That's right, Toots. Your husband's dead. Merry Christmas. Go to nordvpn.com/internethistorian for a huge discount on a 2-year plan.
I think the noir really fit here. I liked it. So it was good.
The ship hits rocks on the port side. A 53-meter gash opens up in the hull, and thousands of tons of water begin pouring in. A loud scraping and bang is heard by all passengers. At the helm, there's panic. Rumblings in the dining room. Martin awkwardly pauses his act as he's helping his assistant into the box. Meanwhile, the lady inside is trapped and terrified. There's confusion across the ship. All of the crew off shift come back on duty. All officers run to the bridge. Technical crews run down to the lower decks to assess damage. On connection with the rocks, they lose propulsion and slow to 8.3 knots.
So about half speed they were going.
They are now adrift. Close the watertight doors at stern. Enormous volumes of water are pouring in. So much so that within 29 seconds of collision, all 6 engines stop working through flooding.
Wow. This is going to be a domino effect, isn't it?
22 seconds later, a blackout happens.
Yeah?
Lights, electrics, the water pumps too. Everything. The captain orders the helmsman hard starboard. This is the final position of the rudder before power to that too is lost. The Cost of Concordia, now without power, is drifting starboard, plunged into absolute darkness. A quick breakdown of the flooding. When the Concordia struck land, it tore open 3 watertight compartments. At first,
I know, so I hardly remember the original reaction to this, but I do remember reading a lot of the comments where I had wrongly assumed, or I had wrongly cited, that I was, the way that I understood it after the RMS Titanic went down in the 1900s, one of the causes that was attributed to it was that all these compartments were linked together. So obviously you had your walls, right? You had your, your walls going up to the ceiling, but they weren't airtight. They were, or not airtight, what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't sealed off, right? So there was like a gap at the top or something. And so thus you get, say, maybe like 3, 4, 5 start flooding, and then you start getting 6 start to flood, and then they'll just keep going down. If I understand and remember my history correctly. I was under the impression that had since been fixed, but I think some of the comments were saying that wasn't the case. There was also comments in regards to the engines, and while a lot of people I feel attribute the engines being in the same spot to that it could be problematic, and in a case like this it would be problematic. As far as I was aware, it's due to weight distribution. So weight distribution in the same area, that way you can say compensate with the helm over here, you can compensate with other things in other places. And if an engine has an issue, right, so say if you have an engine in 6, 7, 10, 13, right, say 13 goes down, you can't service it in a timely manner. You having them over here means that you can service them in a very quick, very efficient capacity and not have to go throughout the ship. While it would distribute the weight potentially better, it just comes down to the design, which I don't have the schooling or understanding in the blueprints and how the weight distribution of this would work.
And 5, which filled very rapidly. Then 6, more slowly, 4 shortly after. Then 7, 8, and 3. Modern ships are built to withstand 2 compartment breaches. These compartments especially, though, are a problem because they contain the engines and the electrics.
Yes, this is a bad
These
roll.
main generators give power to the whole ship. From propulsion motors to rudder to hotel functions, pretty much everything. When they went out, the ship was a functionless, sinking cage.
Right.
A few seconds later, the emergency batteries for internal lighting and communications kick on. When the lights come back on, Martin has vanished. He's ditched the stage. And it caused a huge panic in the theatre, as passengers are trying to flee to their cabins and to muster stations. People already in their cabins come out and start putting on life vests.
Right.
Staff rally and try to calm everyone down. Everything is fine. There's no need for vests. Please return to your cabins. The emergency generator.
You have to understand they're also assessing damage, right? Because it's like an officer getting called to a scene. And we saw this, what was it, FouseyTube recently, right? FouseyTube ended up swatting himself, allegedly, over on Kick, right? And, you have dispatch answering to a call with a dude talking, dude just rambling on about how there's this dude that wants to off him. And, this operator is trying to figure out what's going on. And then, this creator is going like, well, he's got a blank advertisers, he's got a blank to my head, right? And so the officers are going to come to the scene and they're going to try to assess what's going on, and when it's not matching up, right, immediately they're just like, look, we need to make sure we're figuring this out. We need to make sure to assess damage, potential damage control, how protocol is going to dictate that we move on from here, right? So we can apply it to this situation. As far as, it's not that the staff are being any sort of ignorant, incompetent, it's that they're trying to assess what the full damage is. And the worst thing that you can have is a massive crowd of people, because people crushing each other is absolutely a thing that happens. There's a very infamous case about it. What was it, a baseball stadium in the US? It was somewhere, God, where was it? I don't think it was Ohio. Might have been Ohio. There was a very famous case, I believe it was in the 70s, where the stairwell was done in such a way that it caused traffic issues for foot traffic. And I think it was people trying to exit the stadium en masse, and someone tripping, which caused a domino effect. And naturally, you have more people coming in, more bodies being added to the stack, and you end up just crushing people underneath, right? So personnel that are trained in this, personnel that are trained to direct people, they need to make sure they're doing so in a calm manner, because if they're going to freak out, everyone else is going to freak out, right? I'm sure we've all been in a raid party. I'm sure we've all been, in a lobby in games where we're trying to do a common goal, right? Destiny raid, etc., WoW raid, what have you. And that one person starts to freak out, and it may cause someone else to freak out. It might cause someone else to lose their cool. And it's just like, look, man, let's do some damage control. Let's assess what's going on. This is what we know we have to do. Let's keep doing this. And as more information develops, we can see how we're going to change procedure.
Starts. All of the watertight doors close except for door 12, which is jammed. The captain calls Pilot, the chief engineer, as the ship begins to list on the port side. There's water coming in? Yes, there's water. But where? The engine room. But a lot of water?
The lower.
Yes! There's water. You can't go down. Let's go down the other side. In a moment, we'll start the pumps. I'll let you know. In the theater, the whole magic box apparatus slides right off the stage and falls into the crowd,
Right.
further increasing panic.
Yeah.
On the bridge, an announcement is being prepared. They are going to lie to prevent a panic. Let's just say we have a blackout.
I'm really concerned how this would go over in the investigation, because on one hand, you definitely want to control panic. You want to make sure that people aren't going to make the situation worse, because people are going to be terrified in this situation. They just got plunged into the dark after hitting something, and they have no idea what's going on. They're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. I mean, yeah, people are going to freak out. So, I'm curious if this would be protocol and procedure as far as, is there we can assess damage later. We're going to lie now. We're going to, placate everyone, make sure everyone's going to be fine. And then we're going to be able to execute whatever operation we need to necessary. And then after the fact, it can come out as far as, we made sure to say this. He did handle this professionally. This was to make sure, that your guys' safety was being considered. I'm very curious how that's handled.
The deputy chief engineer enters the engine control room. He confirms to the bridge that at least compartments 5, 6, and 7 are flooded.
So that's 3.
Announcements are made.
On behalf of the captain, to inform you that due to an electrical fault, which is currently under control, we're currently in a blackout. Our technicians are working to resolve the situation, and we'll inform you of developments as they occur. Thank you for your attention.
Coincidentally, at the same time in the restaurant, they're playing My Heart Will Go On, and it's very much not helping the situation.
Oh, no.
The captain calls the Cost of Crisis unit, Roberto Ferrarini. He tells
I'm very curious if that was done by intention or not. Like, if that was done intentionally. I feel like there could be someone that would have just put that on. They just popped the disc in.
the crisis unit that they've hit a rock, that they're assessing damages, and that they are also in a blackout. The crisis office says to reverse the ship up onto shore. Well, how are you going to do that? You don't have power to the rudder, let alone the engine.
Right.
Hoist the sails? Anyway, around this time, the wind direction creates a starboard list, and the ship begins to turn anyway, drifting right back towards the shore, which is a very good thing because you want the ship to end up as close to shore as possible.
Right.
A panicked passenger senses that something is off. This isn't like any electrical problem that she's ever seen. Plus, there was a massive crashing noise, and now the ship is tilting. So, she contacts her daughter in Italy. The daughter then calls the police, and the police call the harbour master.
Oh no.
While that goes on, a conversation between Pilon and Ambrosio. The diesel is not starting. The captain asks the engine room, but where have we made contact? Thinking that the incoming water can be reduced. Captain, here everything is lost. The electrical panel, everything.
Well, even then, depending on how, especially if you're dealing with electrical, right? Water conducts electricity. I think it's over. God, it's been way too long since I've had to deal with this in science. Depending on the volume of water, it could theoretically. I don't know. I don't know enough about volts and amps and conductivity to really say anything on that. So I'm going to leave someone with more of a science inclination than I do to really answer that question. But as far as, right, if there's a sparking fuse box, right, and suddenly it goes underwater, generally people are not going to want to go near that.
Saying at this point that the ship is going down. The captain calls Roberto Ferrarini again. Actually, 2 compartments have been flooded.
Very specifically, for anyone in the comment section that is able to answer that, I'm talking about electrical output per volume of water, and if it lessens the effects it would have, right? So if you had, if you had a current running through a cup of water versus if you have a current running through a tub of water versus if you have a current running through a lake, right? How if that would get diluted or not.
But don't worry, the ship's stability isn't in danger. Wrong. Passengers begin going to muster stations on their own initiative. The cruise director says, "We have a lot of people at muster stations that I do not want to fall overboard. Do we make an announcement to tell them to go to the lounges?" Bozio says, "I think that's best." The harbour master from Livorno calls the ship. The captain tells them that we just have a blackout. How long has this blackout been going on? About 20 minutes. Have you asked passengers to put on life vests? It's just a blackout. I gotta go. The harbour master is suspicious. He says
he is sus. Yeah, no, that harbour master's doing his job. He realizes something's up. And I do think at this point, the captain, while I get the amount of stress he's under, I get the amount of pressure he's going to be under, maybe his head's not in the right place.
To his superiors that he thinks something more is going on. He calls a patrol boat to the area and asks them to look at the ship. Another problem. The fan on the emergency diesel generator isn't working properly. Pelon manually has to turn the thing on and off with a screwdriver so that it doesn't overheat and cause a fire.
Legend.
The captain is on the phone to the lower deck.
Definitely dangerous. Would say that probably deserves hazard pay. The absolute legend, though.
It's asking pointless questions like, is it still flooded? Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The captain is essentially in denial of the situation. The harbour master calls again. Finally, he says, the ship is taking on water through an opening in the left side and the ship is listing. He qualifies with, no one dead or injured. The harbour master asks if he needs help.
That was not something that was confirmed. Hold on, wait, what was that?
No
This is not something he could know. That might be a little bit of a faux pas in the investigation.
one dead or injured. The harbour master asks if he needs help. Just a tugboat? When in reality, they need a full rescue. With 3 compartments flooded, the captain finally realizes that things are really bad and they are not going to improve. The Coast Guard orders every available ship to the scene. Meanwhile, up with the passengers, the cruise director's assistant says, everything's under control. Please
Good guys, Coast Guard. Good guys, Coast Guard reading on top of that. Hell yeah.
return to your cabins or hang about in the lounges, no problem. She said this despite knowing it was wrong and that it further endangered lives. Most passengers at this point, though, aren't listening to this nonsense.
That is actually the big one there, is that deceptive information, if not outright lying, if it was done knowingly and it put lives at risk, that's a liability, right?
And they're busy figuring out how to abandon ship. Bang, 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 bang. Local television has already picked up the story and they begin broadcasting live radio feed from the bridge. Captain, the passengers are going on board the boats. Okay, let them go to shore. So then general emergency? Wait, let me talk to Ferrarini. We risk the emergency generators that do not have cooling. It has cooling problems, 100 degrees. The cooling fan has stopped.
Yeah.
Elon calls the bridge and tells the safety officer they need to evacuate. The safety officer relays this to the captain, but after no response, he orders the engine room to evacuate on his own. The captain says, no, stay. We're leaving. So what do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the correct call at that point. I think the correct call is to save as many lives as possible. Obviously, hindsight is going to be 2020, and I'm not in the captain's position, right? I do think at that point, saving the most amount of lives and minimum, even at the cost of this potentially sinking, is going to be the correct call here. What do you think, though? What's your opinion, chat?
Emergency? The captain tells Ferrarini that he's abandoning ship. Abandon ship. Another announcement is made.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. The situation is under control. Please remain calm. And at this time, proceed to your muster station. They're located outside on deck 4.
The Livorno Coast Guard calls again. The captain declares distress. The Coast Guard officially calls for rescue operations. They contact Pietro Mille, the helicopter base commander, who then calls in every available pilot as he rushes down to the helicopter base. Pelon shuts down the emergency generator for the final time. The first rescue vessel arrives. By this point, the lifeboats are already going. Luckily, the ship is very close to shore. Oh, perhaps too close to shore. The ship forcefully runs aground, creating an uneven center of gravity. And it begins heavily listing starboard. The captain issues a general emergency on board. The announcement to abandon ship is finally called and alarms ring out. And with that comes panic. And now that they're listing, with many of the lifeboats too awkwardly positioned to enter the water, there aren't enough readily available and they have to start going back and forth to the shore, picking people up and dropping them off. The patrol boats report to the Livorno harbour master that the ship has run aground and is listing heavily. So the harbour master asks the captain about it, and the captain says, no, the ship is still floating. In fact, we're trying to maneuver it onto the shore. They know he's lying.
Yeah, at that point, you could argue that at minimum, these are deceptive statements, and that is going to be heavily considered.
Hold on, I'm reversing it. Beep, 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 beep. The captain then says to bottom out the starboard anchor. So they drop out the anchors, but let out too much chain, effectively rendering them useless. The deputy mayor of Giglio, Mario Pellegrini, and tobacco shop owner Giovanni Rossi arrive at the harbour. They watch the scene unfold. As the first of the lifeboats arrive on shore, the deputy mayor takes the initiative and races to board one of the lifeboats, returning to the ship.
You know, I actually wonder. So this city was against these quote unquote drive-bys, right? You know, where they come closer to the shore and they honk, and they said that the local population kind of hated it. I wonder if this would play a part in revocation of those privileges. Like, no. See, last time you did this, you went aground. You can't do that anymore. Well, but, you know, it's a very popular route. You know, our tourists, you know, they want to go, when they go on this cruise, they want to pass by here. They like it. No. Ship on our shores, right? I just wonder from a background if that could be the case.
Starts trying to find someone in charge. He gives up and starts helping passengers.
Yeah.
Scatino tells everyone to leave and take radios, but not before changing out of his uniform and into a nice suit.
Wow.
Priorities. Dimitri Kostidis and Silvia Koronica leave with him. The maitre d' and Sir Morton both get out of there. By this point, approximately 300 people are still on the ship. Millet reaches the helicopter base. The first helicopter, a slow-moving Augusta Bell, was already rising from the tarmac for the hour-long flight south.
Right.
Bozio is the last crew member left on the bridge, coordinating evacuation. He then leaves.
The fact that it's not the captain, though, like, this man needs a raise. This man needs a raise and a promotion. The fact that the captain didn't remain is a little upsetting.
To help passengers board lifeboats. The bridge is now abandoned. And then, the ship's black box stops working.
Nice.
Apparently there were technical problems with it. That means, from here, things are going to get a little foggy in detail. A while later, rescue helicopters arrive, but they're struggling to find the ship because they're expecting it to still be well above water.
No.
Passengers are scaling down the port side by ladder as lifeboats return to pick them up.
This is no joke. Oh my goodness. It was no joke, mi amor.
Huh.
Yes.
You're not allowed to make a film
I'm
movie.
allowed.
I like that people, especially when they know there's probably going to be backlash, because you'll see this all the time on like TikTok and some YouTube shorts and stuff, right? Where someone's filming something, but someone is, you know, doing something like stealing mail out of their mailbox, right? Which in the US is, as far as I'm aware, a federal crime. Like, you're not, well, like, oh, you're not allowed to film me. It's like, you're taking my mail. What are you talking about? Yes, I am. I'm fully allowed to do that. Well, no. And then they'll try to like bat the phone away or something like that. Oh man, you'll notice that there's a consistent thread and trend really of people that are doing something they're not supposed to, or realize there could be backlash from that and not wanting to be filmed.
Oh, I'm allowed.
Correlation is always causation,
The
but
faster model sets off. The ship stops healing and comes to a final resting place. Now the Coast Guard calls the captain because he's just learned that the captain has abandoned ship. The
Yep.
captain claims, no, actually I slipped and I fell into one of the lifeboats. Ooh, I'm a klutz. But now that I'm on board, I may as well head back to shore. DeFalco tells the captain to get the fuck back on board.
Yeah.
And the captain kind of acts confused and then effectively refuses. So the captain makes it to shore.
I mean, if that happened in the military, that'd be a court-martial, right? But obviously this isn't the military and this is private, so it's going to have a little bit of a different thing. I'd be very curious how military operations would handle that.
From here, we only have mainstream news reports to rely on, so it's not going to be super accurate. But they say that Giglio's police chief then finds 110 survivors on the rocks at Point Gabbianara. And among them is the captain. It's not known whether the captain helped anyone while he was there, and in fact, the police chief claimed that he just sat on the rocks and watched other people do the rescuing.
You know,
A
I mean, he
while
probably
later,
knows he's
a
fucked.
rescue boat picks up the captain and takes him to the harbour. He speaks to the police. He then finds the ship's onboard chaplain, Father Rafael Molina, and cries to him for about 15 minutes. Then he goes to the harbour master's office to receive probably the biggest dressing down of his entire life.
Oh, absolutely.
Port authorities asked the taxi driver to take the captain back to his hotel.
He definitely got reamed a new one, allegedly, right? Like, that is, oof.
The captain takes the 30-second cab ride to the Bahamas hotel. According to the cabbie, he was beaten like a dog. He was cold and afraid. He only asked me where he could buy a pair of fresh socks. But then he perked right up again and gave an interview to a news crew. He told them that he was the last to leave.
And that is an official statement. That can be admitted as court evidence.
The captain is usually the last to abandon ship. What happened, Captain? We were the last to leave the ship.
Collectively, everybody, it's the meme from the movie where everybody collectively like face palms, right? Or they smack their the forehead with their heads. That's the one.
Saturday, rescuers search for people on the ship. On Sunday morning, a South Korean couple is found in their cabin, safe but shivering. They had slept through the crash and woke up unable to exit their cabin.
Huh.
The last survivor, Manrico Giampandroni, was found with a broken leg. He was the cabin's service director.
Bud.
In the end, 32 people died. The final body wasn't discovered until nearly 3 years later.
Hold up.
People died. Service director. In the end, 32 people died.
Dodge had an accident on the ship 2 years later in recovery. 33 people have died. If it'd be a thing if everyone got out safely, and this was a whoopsie daisy, there were legitimate life losses on this. That's gotta hold weight in regards to an investigation.
The final body wasn't discovered until nearly 3 years later.
Wow.
A crew member, Russell Rebello, and it's believed that he died a hero helping passengers off the ship.
See, here's the thing, though, is I'm assuming that if you're a worker, I'm assuming that you do sign away certain liberties in that contract, in your employment contract. So his family, I'm assuming at the very least, couldn't press charges or try to go after the company that that he worked through, right, or operated that cruise ship, because they probably were like, oh, well, we settled here, or that's over and done with, or maybe even a statute of limitations, right? And that's really just awful to think about, that someone can be this heroic, someone can do the app, just go above and beyond the Call of Duty, which every single employer says they want. They want somebody to go above and beyond the Call of Duty, but they don't want to follow through when someone does pay the ultimate price going above and beyond. And I'm very curious if there's going to be any sort of settlement or payout from that, and at the very least, if they're going to do anything in memoriam of not only him but other crew members that have passed. Because it's different if you're a passenger, right? With a passenger, that opens up the cruise line or the company up to a bunch of liability, and it depends if they settle in or out of court. I'm very curious where this is going to go. I don't remember.
The Cost of Concordia was the largest cruise ship disaster since the Titanic.
Yeah.
And then there's the ship. This is what happens to a 110,000-ton cruise liner when it's left half rolled over in the ocean.
Right. It's not like they can, even this close to shore, it's not like they can just pick it up. There's a huge, it's not necessarily a huge YouTube rabbit hole. There's a bunch of content that you can go down a general size YouTube rabbit hole, right? Of abandoned ships and cruise ships and stuff like that. And if it just, I think there was one, it was like in Ireland, I think. And it just, it was some not Irish ship ended up washing onto an Irish coast, and they kind of just had to deal with it. They're getting hold of the company, and it just, there's no incentive for them, because it's a costly operation to dismantle a ship or even transport a ship like that. So a lot of the times it seems that, unless it's very, very easily accessible, or if it gets towed into a port somewhere, it seems like these are just left to effectively rot. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is that ethical? Is that not ethical? I think there's, discussions to be had there. That's just wild. That's a lot of money wasted too. Yeah. I should probably actually be careful here, because Halo music has been getting copyrighted by even Sony. See Installation 00's video on Halo music right now. They have to be very careful with it, even though Microsoft owns it.
This isn't the end. It's just the halfway point. What most people know is that the Cost of Concordia had crashed, many dead, and that the captain abandoned ship like a coward.
Yeah.
But there's a whole veritable spaghetti of detail.
Oh my god, it's the spaghetti. I remember the spaghetti. I remember everyone clamoring about the spaghetti and what happened to the spaghetti.
To untangle. Let's dive in.
Oh, it's so good.
There they are. The deets.
Got him. Ooh, ow. Ooh, that hurt. There would be looters, yeah.
Loot box time. The Cost of Concordia was more than just a floating resort. There's a mall, a casino, cha-ching, cha-ching. This iron chest was full of safes and cash registers and expensive fittings.
Yeah?
And there were plenty of gamers prepared to sneak by authorities and try their luck in the hot zone.
It's not just this ship, other ships as well. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, like, if there's going to be, there's the meme, right, of breaking open AC units for, what is it, the copper inside, right? How much copper, how much gold, how much precious materials are going to be just in the, circuitry and, piping and stuff in here. Can you just imagine that? And that's not even considering what's going to be left in there in terms of valuables, because, people's personal possessions are going to be left in there. You're going to have, the decadence and opulence of a casino. You're going to have stuff like that could fetch a high price.
Within days, police divers reported that valuable items, once seen lying around the ship, were
absolutely
now missing. High-end liquor, expensive furniture, dining sets, cash from the casino, cash registers, jewelry and display cabinets, safes, Japanese woodblock prints by famous 18th century artists.
Like, that's rough.
As well as the iconic bell, which hung from the bridge of the ship. It was never found.
I'm just impressed at that, actually. I'm just impressed that someone took the bell. I'm not even mad. Like, they went, yeah, fair enough.
Who steals a big fuck-off bell? Even the
Not me. I definitely would not.
server admins were getting involved. 4 divers who were part of the company contracted to refloat the Concordia were spotted on CCTV, sneaking out to the ship. A patrol boat was dispatched, and the men were caught inside the fancy suites with rucksacks full of stolen goods. The 4 men are charged.
Can you imagine, right, just how much stuff like that would fetch on the black market? It's not necessarily that, they stole expensive alcohol, right? It could be marketed as, we have this vintage bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, right? Or you have, a very good another very good vintage wine, or, very top shelf alcohol, right? You could also add that, this is a very unique piece. Not only is it a unique, bottle blend, etc., right? This was also on the Concordia, and or the bell, right? The big cough bell, right? Like, you could there could be a market for that, where you're gonna have some collector somewhere that's gonna I'll pay your price. I want this. This is a piece of history right there. No one else in my circle has this as a collectible, and so someone probably bought it. I could see these having a very good black market presence to certain collectors.
Stealing.
Allegedly.
And thieving. And pinching. Later on, stolen as well as legitimate items found their way to Amazon and eBay.
Awful.
Ships from the casino, postcards, and cabin access cards became highly sought after souvenirs.
Yeah.
It even has a watermark.
Some Australian guy even made a listing for the ship itself,
Nice.
advertising it as buy it to collect. And although there were plenty of bidders, eBay pulled the plug.
Yeah. Because ownership becomes an issue. He doesn't own it.
I know you want to see Scatino go to jail, and we'll get to that. But first, we have to talk about someone else. Dominica Samuelson.
That was a close one.
There was speculation that she was on the bridge that evening because she was the captain's mistress.
I mean, I don't know. I have less of an issue with things like this than most people, I feel. If you're going to be in a S&M relationship, if you're going to be even a cuck, right, in regards to Sneeko situations recently, literally do whatever. The moment professionality gets involved, though, that's when we have an issue. So, for example, if they're having an affair, if they're doing whatever, literally don't care. If it led to the endangerment of people's lives, which, the Concordia did lead to deaths, unfortunately. If there is causation because of acts that they did in an area she shouldn't have been. Because does she have the clearance? Does she not have the clearance? Especially if she didn't have the clearance to be on the bridge, right? I mean, if she shouldn't be there. She shouldn't be there. And I feel that is grounds to look at her and be like, well, you're somewhere you shouldn't be. You know, you're going to be held accountable for this. But I don't know. We'll see where this leads.
Tense media speculation reports that her presence distracted the captain.
They both denied their love for years and maintained that they were just friends. Although she did later admit to the media that she found him handsome. And how could you not?
You so fucking precious when you smile.
But she says there was no romantic link between them.
Some people would like to...
There doesn't have to be a romantic link in an S&M relationship. There doesn't have to be a romantic interest. People think that love and segs, S-E-E-G-S, YouTube advertisers, not saying the word, right? There's not always a correlation there. You can have one without the other. It's entirely possible. It just gets misconstrued and, you know, mass understanding.
Believe they want to know I have something with him. It's more interesting. It's like, you know, some spicy in the story.
Mr. Morton also loved the spotlight, however.
Everyone, oh look!
And took several interviews. But as the pressure mounted upon her, she began making ominous threats to Scatino, saying he must confess, and that you have but 1 week to come clean.
Oh, I thought this was Twitter for a second. So let's say average Twitter user, not it's Facebook, so it's actually worse.
But things from here get weird.
Spicy.
Sir Morton is a bit of a wild card. In a subsequent interview, she claimed a helicopter came to the ship well before the other rescue craft to take away a package.
What?
Huh? And what was that package? Drugs, apparently.
Okay, what's your proof? What's your citation? Do you have any witnesses? Do you have anyone else that can back this wild claim? I mean, it's one thing for someone on TikTok to claim, you know, conspiracy theory, right? It's another when you were in a place you probably shouldn't have been, and now, at the expense of people losing their lives, are effectively clout chasing. I do have issue with that on a very personal and professional level.
So rumors began that the ship was running narcotics for the mafia. And not without cause.
I mean, I guess here's the thing about this is like, it wouldn't surprise me, but not in official capacity, right? It would not surprise me at all for a percentage of cruise ships out there to have contraband smuggled aboard, right? It honestly wouldn't surprise me. I feel like headlines like this get generated and people are going to be like, oh, well, that's not true. That's not... Let's put it this way. Like 0.1% of you are going to actually understand this reference out there. In L5R, I am Scorpion Clan. Shit just happens. Let's put it that way. It's acknowledging that shit happens and not being surprised by it happening and just being disappointed when it does happen because they did it so sloppy. And for the 0.1% of you that actually got the L5R Legend of the Five Rings reference, hi, I love you. The game was amazing. Hope you're doing well.
A number of cruise ships, even recently, have been caught trafficking drugs. As an aside, Scatino was tested for drugs immediately after the crash. He tested negative for drugs in his system, but trace amounts of cocaine were found in a hair sample.
Dude is living his best life. I'll tell you what. Also, no, the Scorpion comment is not me saying that it's okay. It's just that I'm not surprised when it comes out that contraband and trafficking are consistent things that we have to deal with in the world, and I make fun of people because they're bad at it, and it should not happen. We'll get to a point in the world where it can be without those things. We just got to evolve to a certain point.
Makes it smoother and less dry.
Nice.
Nonetheless, the Concordia was searched and no drugs were reportedly ever found.
Sure.
How did we get here? Oh, right, a helicopter. Sir Morton commented on it again the next day and said, actually, that helicopter was just for the captain as a means of evacuation from the ship.
So here's the thing is you already put out that official statement though. And as like, it's if I were to make an official statement, right? Like on the, like, obviously hypothetically, if the Cost of Concordia had, you know, X contraband in the helm, right? Okay. But then I say, oh, no, I didn't mean to say that. Well, I literally just said it. It's an official statement. So, I mean, you know, it depends if there's any damage done, depends if defamation's done, right? It really depends. But you did issue a official statement, and that's why you have to be careful about official statements.
Okay, wait. So she expected to get some sort of first-class rescue while everyone else was still stuck on the ship?
Yeah.
Wait, how
Probably
did we
did.
get here? Oh, right, sex with the captain.
Nice.
Divers were quick to head to the captain's cabin, where they found Miss Sir Morton's lingerie and other articles of clothing, as well as a makeup bag. The jig was up.
Once again, I literally have no issues. I mean, obviously, if you're going to have an affair without the consent of your respective partners, I mean, you're kind of asking for fallout. Like, I literally don't care that people do things with each other. It's when it gets in the way of personal business, and or if it's not consensual or their partners do not consent to them having this affair, right? Because I get that there's open relationships and situations where one partner's like, look, you work in this other state completely and you need to, you know, I get it. You need to do things, you know, you do have my blessing. Just make sure you keep me informed on that. And you know what? A situation like that can work if all parties are on board with it. That is that's something that you go into saying, you know, hey, I'm thinking about this, and all parties have a conversation about it and everyone feels comfortable with it, and a single no at any time, because consent can be revoked, like, hey, you know, after this last one, I really don't feel like it, you know, can we not do this anymore? And that is a perfectly fine conversation to have. It's that if this was an affair, because this, you know, potentially could have been without the consent of their respective partners, and that she was in a situation in an area, the helm, where she really shouldn't have been, and is now effectively clout chasing, using this as a boost to her platform, right? That's if I were to say something like a very heinous act that happened, right, in regards to a very traumatic or a very controversial event, and I were to clout chase by using it as a basis and make these wild claims and accusations that I had no basis on, right? How are you going to look at me and be like, what are you doing, right? It's the same concept.
But they continued denying it. Sir Morton mostly faded from international attention until she was told to appear before the court to present witness testimony.
Yeah.
The judge pressed her to be truthful about their relationship, or she would be held in contempt.
Either tell me the truth or shut up.
So finally, she admitted it.
Yes, I had a sentimental relationship with the captain.
Sentimental?
But now, stop asking about my private life.
She was indeed the captain's lover.
What is up, Trouble Alert Nation? Sitting no sheets.
The face Cap got me. Oh my god.
I'm his wife with Seymour 10. Oh my god.
She and Scatino had been having an affair for several weeks. She also said that on the night she boarded, she didn't have a ticket.
Ticket, please.
And didn't need to pay because nobody questions you when you're the captain's lover.
I mean, I've talked about this before. There's a guy whose whole profession is to just go into, like, they contract him to do this, but he'll go into businesses with the intent of bypassing their security, and like he'll dress up like a firefighter, he'll dress up as, you know, a laundry worker or whatever, right? You know, taking uniforms out of the building, and he'll just walk on in and he's like, hey, I have an appointment with this person, I got this. And because he speaks so confidently and does it in a specific way, security doesn't even check him. And so his whole career is to exploit these weaknesses in businesses. And then at that point, the businesses know, okay, this is where our faults are. This is where we need to make security a little better, right? A lot of life you can kind of go through. And I say this with a cautionary tale, or just caution, right? You can go through a lot in life by just being incredibly confident and knowing what you're talking about. That being said, this can have, you know, ramifications, both potentially positive and negative. So use that information as you will, but please use that information in not shitty ways.
Naturally, she gave another confusing interview after leaving court.
I want to say that today is the second time I die, because the first time I died in the night of the crash with my psychological brain.
What's happening?
Problems. And today I died the second time because, of course, people find out something that I try to hide.
Subsequent to the trial, she used her fame in Moldova to become a political activist, often appearing on television and radio and in articles covering protests, accompanied by pictures of her being arrested by police.
Complaining that there aren't enough bins in the area, the police are telling her to calm down, point out that there are bins right there. The crowd standing around is telling the police she's allowed to protest here and generally white knighting. This gets into the political spectrum, so I feel like I need to reserve comment on that because I don't have all the information.
It was some stuff about victims' violence, women's rights,
Girl power.
yada yada yada. And interestingly, part of a push to block the sale of shares of Moldova's train network to Russia.
Sure.
Huh.
Other than that, I don't really know what she's been up to. Let me just check on her Oh God, not again.
Not again.
Several civil suits were quickly lodged against Cost of Concordia, and their parent company, Carnival Cruises, immediately saw a share drop of 23%.
Oh my God, that's Carnival. Oh wow, that's nutty.
Don't beat.
Passengers sought compensation for their damaged mental health, lost belongings, and loved ones.
Either they allowed him to divert from his course, or they didn't know where their billion-dollar ship was.
And that's honestly the issue, like I brought up earlier, right? So if he's going to change a routine course while he's the captain, and the people on the bridge under him, right, are going to be able to be like, well, I don't think this is a good idea. Well, I'm vetoing you, right? Like, what's the procedure and protocol for that? If I'm supposed to clean something with a specific chemical in a specific way, right? And suddenly I have a coworker, which did in fact happen, who's like, I'm just going to mix bleach with this floor cleaner and clean the floor anyways, despite us telling him not to, right? How did that man not die? I don't know to this day. He was just built different, right? Like, you can't just do things and not tell somebody, especially when you're mixing chemicals. So now you have $1 billion ship, right? And people are just changing the course without telling anybody, without any sort of oversight, allegedly, right? It's going to lead to issues, and at the very least, it's that lack of oversight is problematic.
In a few days, facing financial and media pressure, the CEO attempted to join the bandwagon against the captain and the crew.
That was not the ordinary route that the ship was taking.
Oh, he's going to save face, absolutely.
And was not only taking, but the ship was...
Claiming that the ship was not approved to deviate from the route.
God, I know it was Adam Sandler. I don't know if that was from Waterboy. I don't know why I was reminded of Waterboy. I haven't seen that movie in forever. It's such a funny movie.
But that wasn't true.
The one person in the world that finds out how they're funny is me.
Was deviating by less than 15 miles, or that it was against company rules. Also untrue, because investigators found that they didn't have any rules about deviating route, and they tacitly encouraged sail-by salutes. Now,
and that's the thing, is that if you're caught in a lie like that, that's a large person in the company citing things that don't even exist, and he's trying to make the captain the fall guy to save face, so the shareholders and the stock price go back up, right? That the shareholders are going to be happy that stock price is going to go back up, and then we're just going to sweep it under the rug by making him the fall guy. And that's why when you look into a situation like this, guilt and blame, especially when it comes to companies and accountability, you have to go into it knowing all the details. And if you can't know all the details, say to the NDA, restrictions, legislation, or certain things like, so for example, banks and stuff like that, while they don't necessarily sign NDAs, there's, federal legislation and acts that prevent disclosure of information, right? So you can have somebody that works at X bank and, they can't be like, oh, well, I serviced Bill Gates's account, right? I mean, not that you're breaking laws at that point, and for very good reasons, right? You're breaking laws, and yeah, you're going to get smacked for it. So it just depends, especially when you're trying to hold companies accountable. There's so many things that come into play here that the average person doesn't necessarily think about, and that's why things can take this long. But, it doesn't make it any less serious.
In response to the civil suits, Cost of Concordia offered passengers 11,000 euros each as compensation.
That's kind of small.
11,000 euros, about $14,000, is the minimum compensation under international law when a ship is abandoned.
So at that point, because this comes into if you accept the compensation in certain cases, and this would be more of a case for a lawyer would have to get on this. Because there's actually a case, I don't know which game it was specifically, but there was a game that was like pre-alpha on Kickstarter, and they released an alpha build but in it was in the ELA. If you downloaded this and played this, you were waiving your rights to effectively take further legal action against this company or something like that. A very brief overview of the situation, paraphrasing a couple things, but that's the thing, right? Is if you accept compensation from a company, it can waive your right to be able to go after them. So they're providing the minimum amount that is required by international law, and this could be seen as, well, we gave you compensation, so you can't pursue this, even if this does go to, millions per person in settlement.
This was to reimburse them for their tickets, as well as any costs they accrued in having to unexpectedly travel home early.
That lost documentation is an issue.
That was supposed to release them from everything and anything that has to do with this accident.
The law, as somebody that can speak working with a fraud team, right? That lost personal identifying information, like passports, licenses, etc., that's problematic. Because I've seen, I've seen the backside of what happens when people get their identity stolen, and I've had to have conversations in regards to next steps people should take and could take, right? So that one hits me in a little bit of a different way than it would your average person.
I cannot ask for more than this.
A lot of passengers, understandably, were not too happy with this deal, and they refused to take the money.
We think the offer is an insult for what these poor passengers went through. We think that the compensation being offered is not commensurate.
That lawyer's about to make a lot of money, isn't he?
Take it. Compensation being offered is not commensurate.
Later, Costa Crociere would lodge a plea deal with the Tuscany court to pay a €1 million fine to avoid a criminal trial. The judge agrees. Costa Crociere is now off the hook for all criminal liability for the whole thing. They've washed their hands of the incident.
That's wild to consider, and that is why there's discussion at large of, depending on the size of your company, the penalty should not be a flat rate and should in fact be it should tier with what you do. It should be proportional what you are. So if you are a $1 billion company, whereas someone that's under $1 million, right, could pay, a several $100,000 fine depending on the severity of what they're doing, right? Instead of $1 billion business paying a several $100,000 fine because they have more responsibility and they have more weight, arguably, it could be a several million, if not, dozens of millions in the same fine because it's proportional. But I feel that does start getting into the political territory. What I'm citing here is that because of situations like this, especially in modernity, we're starting to have these conversations of proportionality in regards to fines rather than just flat rates, especially if companies exceeding a certain dollar amount in revenue.
And flex the residual droplets of responsibility onto the faces of 6 staff members.
That's disgusting.
Passengers and relatives of the dead are livid that the company has been able to avoid criminal responsibility.
Offer is not commensurate.
Civil suits against the company continue. By the way, the residents of the island of Giglio also banded together and sought damages. They didn't get much.
Yeah.
Eventually, passengers who refused the initial compensation of $11,000 joined civil parties against Scatino in his trial.
So here's the thing about that, right? Is that while their spot used to be, before the Concordia, while it used to be a tourist spot where they would do the sail buys, right? Now there's a giant shipwreckage literally on their front door. And, as far as I'm aware, it wouldn't necessarily be proper for a cruise liner or a cruise line company to do the same drive-by with a view of the Concordia right there, right? At the very least, seeing a ship that company also owned in a derelict state that effectively sunk, right? Wouldn't be a good look to be on the cruise line by the same company. So there could be the argument, if they pulled tourism from that area, that could also damage the area economically. And at the very least, it should be Carnival's duty, because they did own it. They did own this mess, right? From a legal standpoint, from owning the asset, right? They should be cleaning it up. At bare minimum, they should be able to take that out of there. But you see that it was still there, and it's just, people are protesting it.
Trial in 2015.
It's not commensurate.
They were awarded €30,000 each. Other cases, especially those involving lost relatives, are settled for undisclosed amounts.
Yeah, that's interesting. Not really. Nice.
New York attorney Peter Renee traveled to Budapest to represent 6 real survivors of the disaster.
At Renee, we personally work on every case.
And we'll work harder than anyone to get you the most money possible in the shortest amount of time.
And while
there is so much money in legalists. Oh my God! There he is. There he is. There's Asmongold.
On the job, a 7th case cropped up via email. An elderly woman, a loner, said,
Help me, Mr. Ronai, for I have lost my daughter, Eva, and my 5-year-old granddaughter, Roxana.
So Mr. Ronai agreed to speak with her. However, there were some inconsistencies in her story. Neither Eva nor Roxana were on the passenger list. Odd. But Costa is known for having stowaways.
Gotcha, bitch.
Still, Mr. Ronai was suspicious. They wouldn't cheaty old Petey, would they? Renai inquired further about why she was on board, especially without a ticket. Ilona said,
Well, I don't know, but you should ask her boyfriend.
Zolt Horvath.
He'll know all the details.
I'm up all night. I'm going crazy, he said. But Mr. Renai was still suspicious.
Sus.
Because then she asked, how much money do you think this is worth?
Yeah, because that's the thing with anything, is there are going to be people that have the best intentions and just want fair compensation, right? You're going to have people that see this as potentially an open meal ticket, and not you see this in not just this, but many, many other things in life. So that murkies the water a little bit, especially for people that are trying to get fair compensation.
This is a huge red flag, Petey. In 20 years of doing this, you've never had anyone ask about money.
Right.
Why now? So Mr. Renai hired an investigator and sent photos around of the missing girl. The next day, the phone rang. Ahoy hoy, it was the boyfriend again. Look, there's been a bit of a misunderstanding and the child isn't missing at all. And then he claimed he was confused because he had done too many drugs the night before.
Nice.
Oh. Okay, can I speak to the daughter then?
When you're actually speaking with the lawyer and you're telling him that you were just absolutely just on it. Oh my God. Oh, big brain move.
At first, he was refused. So Renai said that he'd have to file a missing persons report to the police if he couldn't. The boyfriend relented. That night, Renai met with Zolt and brought the police with him.
Yeah.
He speaks to the granddaughter and asks her if she's seen Mum. Yeah, I saw her today. Oh, really? Yeah, we went to the park today and we went on the swings.
Nice.
Oh no, the jig was up. So the mum walks into the room sheepishly. It's a miracle. And the story changed again. Okay, I'm not dead, but I did injure my leg when I jumped from the ship. And then I immediately flew back to Budapest. Although don't worry about checking my leg because there are no visible marks or injuries. Oh, Petey, I'm beginning to think they weren't even on the boat. Also, it turns out this lady isn't her mum, it's just a neighbor.
Yeah.
Eventually, Renee managed to make the pair confess. And then they said, hey, we haven't done anything wrong. We haven't taken any money.
I do think that at the very least you've wasted this lawyer's time. And I don't know in what capacity these misrepresented facts were given. But that also could be something for consideration.
And in the end, it looks like there'll be no criminal punishment for the scam, because Hungary, a former communist country, has no laws against insurance fraud on the books.
Yeah.
The law firm that never sleeps, call 1-800-6647.
Oh, so that would count as insurance fraud. Okay. Yeah, fraud makes sense as a charge.
Oh, that's a bad idea. Oh, that's a very bad idea.
Mario, would you teach me some Italian?
Oh, of course! Get back on board, for fuck's sake.
Okay, thanks.
Shenmue, wow.
Gregorio De Falco, the naval officer who shouted at Scatino to Vada a bordo caso, became a bit of a national hero overnight in Italy. He, like the rest of the world, expected Scatino to go down with the ship.
We'll see if that gets muted.
And when the captain chickened out, De Falco was there to admonish him. And when he stopped answering the radio, he called him on his cell phone to continue putting him on blast. When the captain first reported just a blackout, De Falco didn't believe the story and immediately began preparing a rescue effort, which likely saved several lives.
Right.
His actions were applauded by most Italians who were tired of their public servants being corrupt and avoiding responsibility.
Yeah.
Accordingly, shirts sporting Vada a bordo caso were being printed by the end of the week, others setting it as their phone's ringtone.
Nice.
But then, in September 2014, without warning, DeFalco was transferred to an admin role in the Coast Guard.
Oh.
Hear what I said? You've been demoted.
DeFalco said that he had been passed up for promotion, that he had also not been told which admin office he was even being transferred to, and that it all effectively cancelled 10 years of his career. DeFalco was tres furioso.
Yeah.
And there was public speculation that it was owing to bad blood between himself and Admiral Delano, his former boss. His status among the public overshadowed his superior in many ways. On the other hand, his boss said,
promoted and sent to Rome after the disaster? That's wild.
No, it's part of a normal career progression for naval officers, and that he must show more maturity and professionalism to advance his career. Now,
I mean, okay, yeah, I understand where they're coming from now in regard. It's probably due to him cussing Scatino out. So it's a professionalism thing, right? How if you're calling a customer service number, say for a bank or something like that, and the person on the other end of the line just can't call you a bellend, right? Or they can't say that you're an idiot, right? Reasonably, right? Customer service, right? So I mean, yeah, I could see where this could be seen by them as trying to reprimand him, but doing so in a way that, but we're not reprimanding him. It is part of the necessary progression, and he needs to show a little more maturity. Yeah, I can see where they're coming from this.
It's hard to know what's true in office politics, so let's leave that alone.
Yeah.
And anyway, in 2018, DeFalco said "Buenas noches, you later" to the Italian Navy to become a politician. In March that year, he was elected to the Italian Senate, serving as a member for Livorno. He still serves there today.
I'm the captain now.
He's the captain now. Yeah. Oh boy, and we do love our Italian Senate. Absolutely cultured, don't we? Nice. I just have to be really careful with music.
Scatino was taken into custody by police and underwent questioning. However, it was clear that this would not be a straightforward investigation. So the judge released him under house arrest at his home in Sorrento, a town in Napoli. By July of that year, the house arrest was relaxed and he was allowed within this general area. While under house arrest, he wrote a book with this journalist from Rai magazine. I have no idea what it says. I don't speak Italian. But goddammit, he must have some kind of charisma going on, because there's been a lot of speculation in the press that he had an affair with her as well.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Hold on, I got it. Not content with abandoning his ship, this dude is determined to abandon his wife as well.
Wow.
So,
savage.
Scatino and 5 others are facing criminal charges.
Right.
Straight away, everyone lodges a plea bargain with the court. And all of those plea bargains are accepted, except for Scatino's. And the condition of everyone's reduced sentences are that they must provide witness testimony against Scatino.
They're going after this man.
Touched me.
Ciro, Jacob, and Silvia were all given suspended sentences. Roberto and Manrico are able to opt for community service or house arrest. Not a bad deal.
A good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
And that meant that Scatino was now all on his own.
Yeah.
Ciro, the first officer, was the first to give his testimony. On the witness stand, he claimed that Scatino was distracted by his mistress and other guests on the bridge. That there was confusion over who was in command. Then it was Jacob's turn. And he said, Lamau XD, because he didn't actually bother with his testimony or his reduced sentence. He just fled the country. It took authorities 12 months to eventually track him down on the outskirts of Jakarta. And when they said, oi, we still want that witness testimony, he just scalped again. And he hasn't been found since.
I was about to say absolute legend, but you probably shouldn't flee a country that you're expected to provide testimony in. Oh my God.
After that, Ferrarini gave his testimony, then look, we don't have time to relitigate the whole trial, so let's just go straight to the verdict. Guilty! Scatino was found guilty of multiple manslaughter, causing a shipwreck, abandoning ship, and lying to authorities.
Right.
He is sentenced to 16 years and 1 month in prison.
That month, though.
But wait, there's still the appeals. The appeals trial begins. And the verdict on the appeal... Surprise! Rejected.
Nice.
So Scatino's lawyers appealed again. And the verdict on the final appeal?
What grounds are they appealing on that they didn't do the investigation? Like, what grounds are they appealing on? And that's kind of the thing that just like it when it comes to trials, when it comes to dealing with people, because I watched the bits and pieces that Moist Critical went over the Amber Heard trial, and that thing was an absolute farce. Like, that was wild, just how many times people that are, under oath can just either say not the right thing or say something that's, not entirely correct. It's absolutely wild. Court is, it almost feels like it's like babysitting adults and trying to get them to actually do I don't know. I'd be very curious on what grounds he's trying to appeal and if this actually held weight or not.
Scatino made multiple attempts to secure a plea deal, but was denied by the prosecution each time. The prosecution called for Scatino to be sentenced to 26 years in prison, calling the incident a Titanic affair.
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
Scatino was not. His lawyers stated that he was waiting outside of the jail for the ruling, so that if his plea was rejected, he could immediately start serving his sentence. And with that, 5 years and 4 months after the disaster, he was finally in a cell.
Uh-huh.
And I will not be making any comment. Oh my God, that
hurt. The salvage.
Oh boy, that aged well. Oh my God. Oh. That aged horribly. Oh, like spoiled milk. Oh my God.
Operation was enormous. It took over 2 years and cost an estimated
That's the ship from XD Gale of Darkness, isn't it?
$2 billion. Beginning in early 2012, they first spent 2 months pumping fuel from the ship's tanks.
Yeah.
At the same time, they had to pump seawater in so that the balance wasn't affected and the ship didn't slide around.
Right.
In early 2013, a platform was built under the ship to prevent it from falling further. Sponsons were then attached to the sides of the ship and cables attached to the underwater platform. The sponsons were then dragged underwater and opened up to allow the ocean to fill them. The ship.
Part of me wonders if it would have been beneficial just to sink it. Like to fully just sink it. Maybe make a reef out of it. I don't know. Science peeps, if you know about reefs, artificial reefs, coral reefs, etc., please let me know. I'd be very curious.
Could then roll over properly. By late 2013, the ship was upright once more. The sponsons were then attached to the side of the ship to help keep it balanced. It now rested partially above water and crews could walk around safely. By July 2014, the water was removed from the sponsons and compressed air was pumped in to lift the ship. And she was ready to cruise again. This time to a port in Genoa. It was a 4-day towing journey to the docks where a 2-year process of dismantling and recycling would begin.
Right, and in that case, especially if the company's trying to either recover the asset, and or dismantle, recycle, reuse, etc., right? I mean, that is also a valid thing to do. At the very least, it seems like they paid for the cleanup, and I will commend them on that. I will absolutely commend them on cleaning up this incident.
That same weekend of the towing, Scatino was busy. He was the guest of honor at a white party on an island in the Bay of Naples. He appeared on the front page of a local newspaper, flanked by 2 of Italy's most eligible bachelorettes.
What? The end?
Anyway,
question mark?
So these are the things that I remember from the Cost of Concordia. That sweet maiden of the sea.
Awful.
And as for you, little fella. Well, it's time to return you.
Awful.
From whence you came.
Moist.
6 quick things. 1. NordVPN, good product, check them out. Number 2, there's a new video on the second channel. You probably didn't see it because it was temporarily restricted. Now it's not. Enjoy. 3, if you've never seen the second channel before, give it a go. It's a different type of content, but we put a lot of production into it.
We do.
It's not just offcuts. 4, there are a couple secret channels as well, but I ain't telling you where they are.
Yeah.
5, no more 45-minute videos on the main channel. Back to 10 to 15 minutes and more of them. 6, There's a Q&A coming out next week on incognito mode. It's got a ton of detail that we had to cut for the sake of brevity, and will no doubt feature a ton of corrections as well. That's it. Thank you.
Spicy.
Spicy. It's a spicy meatball. And I assure you, we will reprise that reaction as well. Thank you if you came back for the re-react to this. I didn't even remember half of this, and I hope I added some commentary that was different than last time, because I think there were definitely points that were brought up that were different than last time. But I digress. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Concordia? Thoughts on things surrounding the animals that evolving? That was the wrong word. Do you remember it happening live? You know, do you have anything else to add, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. But we'll go through the Q&A at some point soon. If you're on the channel, I definitely appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next time.